For our feature speaker today, I introduce Mr. Chief Mike Healy. He's going to introduce Mr. Scott Geiselhart. If you haven't seen his presentation, I encourage you to hit your friends up, come in here and see this. I got to see, had the pleasure of seeing Scott give his presentation. I was down at Florida last year for the IAFC VCOS section, Volunteer Combination Officer section. Very informative, great program. It's focused on health, mental health of the firefighters and the safety of them. So please welcome Mr. Mike Healy, Chief Mike Healy.
Good afternoon, folks. As the President just said, my name is Mike Healy. I'm Chief of the Central Nyack Fire Department in about 10 miles north of New York City. And about 5 years ago, I got involved in a program with the National Volunteer Fire Council called Share the Load. For those of you who don't know about the program, I used to be the clinical director of the New York City Transit Authority, and about 8 years ago, I retired. When I retired, I went to a friend of mine who also worked in that field, and we put together. I always wanted a place for firefighters with behavioral health programs in this country to have a place to call. And we got together with the National Volunteer Fire Council and this friend of mine, Mike Blackburn, who's a retired battalion chief from Providence, Rhode Island. And we started this program. You may have seen some of the information on it. The fire line number is 888-731-3473, which means fire. And we started the program. We answer about 1,000 calls a year. The calls come directly to me. If I don't pick up, they go to Mike Blackburn. Along the way, we run into some pretty serious things. The other night, I received a call from a captain in New Jersey. Some of you may have seen it. His crew was sent out to respond to an EMS call, and it turned out it was their chief, and their chief had committed suicide. The stuff that we go through, Scott and I today are doing a presentation in room 203 at 2:45, and the name of the presentation is called The Price We Pay. We go out there day and night, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and we're always running into what everybody else is running away from. Eventually, we have to pay a toll. In July of 2014, my co-presenter today called that number. He was severely traumatized from his time in the fire service. He does a fantastic presentation. He's going to do a very fast presentation today because we have a very limited amount of time. So if you see me going like this, telling him he's got 5 minutes left, it's either that or I'll just throw this at him, and we'll get him done. But with that, I'd like to introduce a man who has an extreme amount of courage, as you're about to see. And with that, I'll introduce ex-assistant chief Scott Geiselhart.
Thanks, Mike. As Mike said, my name is Scott Geiselhart. I'm a firefighter from Faise, Minnesota, and I've been a firefighter for 21 years. When I first got on the fire department, we didn't do any auto extrication. We didn't do any drownings, any ice water rescues. We had a fire department close to us that came and did all the rescues. And what we noticed was it was taking about 15, 20 minutes for that truck to come through our town. And as you well know, the golden hour is pretty important when it comes to auto extrication. We have to get them to the hospital in an hour to make a big difference. So we decided we're going to put together an auto extrication rig. And low on funds, but we took a 1-ton pickup, put the jaws of life in it, Gumby suits, ice water rescue stuff. I mean, way overloaded this truck. And started doing auto extrication. And we got good at it. We trained very hard. We had some mechanics on our fire department. We trained really hard. We got good. We started going on calls, and we had some bad runs. We had a lot of fatalities. And as a firefighter, I kept telling myself, hey, we're there to make things better. We're not causing these accidents. We're there to make them better, and they're not my fault. We're doing the best we can. Well, they started to build on me, and I didn't realize it. I started to get angry, started to have some nightmares. I started to drink a lot, started to stay away from my family, go to the bars, and I didn't realize what was going on in my life. And I started yelling at my kids, yelling at my ex-girlfriend. And in 2010, after this building and building and building, we had a car accident. And it was in a small town like Faise, it's 1,300 population. We know a lot of the people we're going to these accident scenes with, or the ice water rescues. In 2010, we had a bad accident. It was a high school kid. Rolled over in a swamp, and we got there in 10 minutes. He was underwater for 10 minutes. We got him out. Everything was picture perfect. We did an awesome rescue. They revived him, got him to Fargo, North Dakota, which is about an hour away from where we cut him out, or where we took him out. And he was doing great. Everything was going good. And things went south, and he died. He passed away from a lung infection. And the basket was full. That one put me over the edge. I killed him. I was in the water with the Gumby suit on. I pulled him out of that vehicle. I pulled him through the water, got him to shore, and I told myself I did something wrong. I put something in his mouth. I gave him that lung infection. I didn't do the rescue right. I started blaming myself for his death. I started blaming myself for every other car accident and drowning that we went on, that we lost people. I told myself I was jinxed. I started really isolating myself, and I was into meth. After that, I was doing a line of meth a day minimum. I mean, I was doing meth all the time. And the anger was out of control. The isolation, I started pulling away from my family. I owned a repair shop. I started staying down there 20 hours a day. The nightmares got to the point where I didn't want to sleep anymore. And in 2012, after my girlfriend left me, I started doing a line of meth an hour to stay awake. I decided I wasn't going to sleep until I was dead. I wanted to die. I didn't want to be alive anymore because of the nightmares and the flashbacks, the anger that I didn't understand what was going on. I mean, I was the guy that didn't have to step on a Lego when he walked in the house. I just blew up over nothing. When my ex-girlfriend moved out, I had an empty house. She took the kids with her. She moved into an apartment building, and I started to drive my car home from work, put it in the parking lot, put it in my driveway, and I had my lights on timers in my house. So they'd go off at 10 o'clock. My car would be in the driveway. I'd walk back to work and work all night long. I wouldn't work. I'd actually just be there, staying away from people. I couldn't be around people anymore. The nightmares, because of the nightmares, I didn't want to sleep. The meth, they were delivering the meth right straight to my shop. I was buying it by the ounce, over a line an hour. 2014, I went over to my ex-girlfriend's apartment to talk to the kids, and the same thing happened. It happened every time I was around them. They didn't have to do anything. I just got mad. I took it out on them. I yelled at them, and I knew something was wrong with me. I figured I had a split personality. There was something that was eating me up so bad that I thought I was going to go off the handle and kill somebody or hurt somebody. I decided to go down to my shop. I went into my office, sat down at my desk, reached in the drawer, pulled out my .44 Magnum, put it to my head, and I pulled the trigger. And it clicked. If you know anything about a revolver, the hammer comes down, it has to hit something to make it click. I slammed that gun down on the desk, terrified of it, not understanding why that gun didn't go off. I chose it for a reason. It was my favorite gun, and I knew it was going to do the job. I literally climbed the desk behind me in my office. I was up on my desk against the wall, staring at that gun, wondering what was going on, why it didn't go off. I finally got down, and I reached for the gun. I unloaded it. And when I went to set it down on the desk, the cylinder wanted to close. And I had to put a pin in the cylinder so the cylinder wouldn't close. I was so scared that that gun was still going to go off, even when all 6 rounds were laying on the desk. Nothing was making sense. I sat down on my desk, and my computer was in front of me, my keyboard was in front of me, and I started typing on the keyboard on a Google search. I started typing in nightmares, flashbacks, anger, drugs, and I hit enter on a Google search, and PTSD lit the screen up. I've never been in the military. I thought PTSD was a military thing. I didn't know what PTSD even stood for, post-traumatic stress disorder. I did research on it, trying to figure out why I got PTSD, and I found it when I did that Google search. When I opened up the Mayo site, it showed all the symptoms. Every one of the symptoms I had, it was like looking in a mirror. I couldn't understand why somebody didn't warn me about PTSD. Like I said, I studied it, and I found out there was therapy, there was treatments, there was a way to get out of this. It's not a death sentence, it's not a lifetime sentence. I can get some help. I studied it all night, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, I went over to my ex-girlfriend's apartment and knocked on the door, and when she opened up the door, I stormed into the room. I was so excited that I had PTSD, and I wasn't going crazy. I didn't have a split personality. I had a name to what was going on in my life, the anger. It all made sense. It was things I've gone through. When I stormed into that room and started yelling, I was yelling, a passion on my face and everything that, I found out it was PTSD. My ex-girlfriend had my 2 sons behind her, backing them down the hallway in the apartment. And my sons were looking around her with fear in their eyes that I was there to hurt them. They thought I lost my mind. I left that apartment, went back down to the shop, and the gun was still laying there, and the rounds were still laying there. And that's when I noticed that none of the rounds had a dimple on the primers. And I was so confused. I just didn't know what was going on. I actually thought about loading that gun and putting it to my head and start clicking it till it went off, because this doesn't make sense. I thought it was a mistake that I was alive. Instead, I sat down at my desk, and I had collected some phone numbers over the years, and I started calling them. I called a suicide hotline 12 times, and nobody answered. I called 3 other phone numbers that my chief had given me 5 years prior, 3 phone numbers for firefighters that need to talk to somebody, need help. They were helplines, and all of them were disconnected, all 3 of them. I called a police officer friend. I asked him if he'd go over and talk to my ex-girlfriend, tell her what PTSD is, tell her I can get help, tell her I can pull out of this thing. He told me he was going to come get me, take me to the hospital. They were going to lock me up. And that's not the answer I wanted to hear. I wasn't going to be locked up when I just found out I had PTSD, and I found the answer to why I was acting the way I was acting. I hung the phone up after telling him that if the next 2 phone numbers don't work, I'll call him back. The next phone number was to a local crisis line, and it was for a gal that we were supposed to talk to. The first responders were supposed to talk to her, and she was going to help us. I called it, got a hold of her, told her I just tried to kill myself. I said, I think I got PTSD. I need some help. She made an appointment for a week and a half out. I made the appointment for a week and a half out, hung the phone up knowing I was going to be dead by sunset. There's no way I could make it a week and a half. I'd be lucky if I made it till sunset. The last phone number I got was texted to me by my assistant chief. And I'm not sure if I asked for it or asked for help or if he just seen it. I'm pretty sure he just sent it, but it was a Share to Load program, National Volunteer Fire Council, the Share to Load program, phone number. And I called it, and I wasn't expecting much. With 17 phone calls earlier, none of them worked. This was my last call. And I was looking at that gun thinking this was it. When I called it, it rang twice, and they answered the phone. I told them I tried to kill myself. I need help. I begged them. And they said, Scott, we've got you. It was like they held out their hands, and they had me. They were there. They talked me down from the place I was at. They told me they were going to be there with me, help me through it. We're going to get there together, and they were. They told me about something called EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and they helped me make the appointment. I had to call. I made the appointment in Fargo, North Dakota, which is about an hour from us, and The next morning I went to start the process, and it was amazing. The first 2 times we just talked about things, just like a counseling session. And then the 3rd time, about a week later, I went back, only this time, like I did it every hour on the hour, except this time I did 3 lines of meth in the parking lot because I knew what they were going to do. At least I thought they did. I thought I did. What they did was they did the light session type thing with me where they put vibrating pads on my legs, and they had a light bar up in front of me that went back and forth. And when we were talking, we thought it was a girlfriend or something that hurt me along the lines, and we were going to find out, who it was and work through it. Because I never had any emotions. I never loved anybody. I couldn't feel. I was just numb. And when we started the light session, and we started talking about my ex-girlfriends, and all of a sudden, it was like my mind went into the REM mode of sleep, and all hell busted loose. The nightmares came alive. The car accidents, I started to see them. I never talked about them. We didn't do debriefings. I never discussed the car accidents with anybody. I had no support at home to talk to anybody at home. Couldn't talk about it in the bars. We're told not to. Volunteer fire departments, we go home after putting the trucks away. We never talked to anybody. We never debriefed. The accidents came alive. I was seeing the faces, the cars. I was smelling the exhaust. I was smelling the antifreeze. It was reliving them. And it was talking my way through it. And it was amazing because as I was doing that, it felt almost like a weight was coming off me. And I was coming back alive. I started to feel again. And after about 3 sessions, or actually it was after about the 2nd session, I started seeing in color again. I couldn't see in color before. I could tell you what color something was, but it wasn't bright like I see the colors now. It was all shadowy and dark and gray, and it wasn't nice, and it was numb. When I started seeing colors, it was amazing because it was like I said, it was an hour drive home after these sessions, and I was starting to see things I'd never seen for years. Cars, houses I didn't even know were there that were there for 20 years. In fact, after about 6 sessions, I was feeling so good that when I went in and the therapist was there and he was trying to dig out more, trying to find out what more was in there, in my head that was holding back. And it was amazing because I couldn't stop smiling. He said that he's never had somebody come in and do therapy, and he's never had somebody make him feel better after the therapy than before I went in there. Like I said, I couldn't stop smiling. I was cracking jokes, and it just felt like it was free again. The peace that came over me was amazing. I went home after my last session, and I was in my driveway, and my sons were with me in the car. And when I was 18 years old, I used to jump picnic tables over in the city park across from where we lived, and I felt so good. At 46 years old, I told my sons to watch this. Famous last words. I went and tried to jump the picnic table, and I almost made it. Came down pretty bad. Didn't twist my ankle, but it hurt. And I don't know how I didn't break my leg. I hobbled back, and my sons are right there to say, "Hey, Dad, that was pretty awesome. You want to do it again?" My neighbors were out in the yard. They thought I lost my mind again. 2 weeks later, I stretched out, and I jumped that picnic table at 46 years old. That's how good I felt. And there wasn't a single neighbor out in the yard. My kids weren't around. There wasn't even a dog to see me jump it. But I'm fine with that because I know I did it, and I'm not going to try it again. I'll call it good. This business is dangerous. We see things that normal people are not. We're not supposed to see this stuff. We're not built for this. Like I said before, we didn't do any debriefings. I held it all in my head. I was this tough guy. I was a training officer. I was a rescue captain. I was teaching all these guys how to do auto extrication and ice water rescues. They looked at me, they had me up on a pedestal, and they looked at me like I was the tough guy. Man, Scott's got this together. I was a mess, addicted to meth. When I did those 3 lines right before I went into that light session of EMDR, that's the last 3 lines of meth I've done. My son, in December of 2014, when we were in Fargo Christmas shopping, he was 13 years old. And he was sitting beside me, and we were taking a corner, and I'll never forget it, because I looked over at him and told him, I said, I'm so glad that that gun didn't go off. And he looked at me and said, Dad, the gun did go off. It killed the bad dad. And I realized I haven't been angry, I haven't had a nightmare, and I haven't done meth since August of 2014. And before that, I was doing a line of meth an hour. I couldn't live without it. The nightmares were every time I closed my eyes. I seen my kids falling out of the sky on fire, landing in the water, still burning. And I couldn't help them because I was paralyzed. The jaws of life wouldn't work. I couldn't get to them. Every time I closed my eyes, I was having nightmares like that. And now I have dreams. I can sleep. I sleep awesome, maybe too good. It just feels it's so incredible what's happened now. I mean, I'm in Maryland, Ocean City, Maryland. And when I speak, I don't even get nervous. I couldn't even speak in front of my own fire department. I mean, I'd have to have like a huddle. I couldn't have them out in the room, it'd be kind of a half-ass huddle. And now I stand in front of hundreds and hundreds of firefighters. I was in New York, for cripe's sakes, a few days ago talking to New York firefighters about feelings. Wow. And I didn't get shot or anything. Sorry, Mike. But yeah, it's just so important for us to reach out. The warning signs are there a lot of the time. We've got to watch and train, educate each other. There was just a couple suicides this last week, firefighter suicides. There's more firefighters taking their own lives than dying of line of duty deaths. And yet we don't educate. We don't train about mental health, suicide, and PTSD. That's like sending our guys into a house fire without having an air pack on. We can't do that anymore. How much time do I have? Am I good? I guess I just want you guys to take care of each other and watch out. Listen to your spouses when they say, you're changing. Listen, they're going to see it first. It's a dangerous business, and we got to watch out for each other. I think we got a class coming up later today too.
2:45.
2:45. If anybody wants to come, we're going to be talking a lot more in depth on it. I'll be speaking a little bit more. But thanks for having me. I love the Maryland tan.
Thanks, Scott. Just a quick idea of what's available. As you can understand what Scott just mentioned, anytime you have a problem with behavioral health of any type, substance abuse, anxiety, depression, give us a call. We'll do the best we can to help you out. Scott mentioned, the New York firefighters, when he went up to New York, he said, what's the deal with this, with the crosswalks in New York? He said, anywhere else in the country, I'd step out in a crosswalk and cars slow down. I said, in New York, you step in a crosswalk, you're nothing but a target, So again, I want to thank Scott for his courage, and give it back to the president.
Yes, I'm very thankful for you preaching your story. I can't say enough about it. And for being here today, you guys get away with a 125th anniversary convention mug. Also, I present you with my challenge coin. It's actually a joint coin, both sides, myself and also the ladies president, Barbara Sue Nelson. The least I could do.